Yep. I was a teacher, and the teaching in New Orleans, I don't know about in other places, but it's so toxic, right? Because it's run by primarily white organizations who have no family. Like all of the upper administration, nobody has families, right? So they can't put themselves in your shoes at all. So I have a newborn baby, but they expect you to be to work at 6, right? And then you basically get no break throughout the day. And you're dealing with hundreds of kids, and not only are you not getting breaks, you are running the recess, you're running the lunch, right? So I would have to eat my lunch at the beginning of my shift because I had to have enough food in my body to get me through. And so then I get off of work, go pick the baby up from daycare. All right. Then come home, see my wife for an hour. Then next thing you know, we're back in bed getting ready for the next day. Right. And then if you can't perform every day at this high capacity, they would penalize you somehow. And so it was like, when I started going to therapy and I decided to quit my job, like my therapist said, he was like, nobody can work in that scenario. Nobody can be a perfect husband, father, and employee in that type of environment. But it's almost like there's no option for us to see that and to say,
Right.
this is not normal, not okay. This is actually toxic and abusive. But because of the way society is, you got to pay those bills. For me as a Black man, and I'm sure it's like this for Black women, the moment that I'm not providing something, I'm worthless. And so then that's playing in your head too.
And I think that what we also as a Black community forget is that in placing all those burdens on us, we're just creating trauma for ourselves. And then we go to work and we get those microaggressions and we're re-traumatized. And so we're just walking around with this truckload of trauma on our shoulders, and we can't understand why we're not okay, why we can't think clearly, why we can't achieve more. And it's because you've buried yourself under a whole dump truck of trauma, yet you don't even recognize it. Like, we don't even know it's trauma anymore. That you don't even know when you walk into that meeting and everybody gets quiet, that's a trauma experience.
Yeah.
You just think, oh, everybody's quiet because I'm here. No, they were probably just saying something inappropriate. They were probably saying something about you. They were probably looking at how your hair looks or how your clothes look or whatever it is, but it's a trauma experience for you. And, if you don't process it properly, then you just carry it on. And like you said, you pick your daughter up from daycare, and then you probably take your trauma experience out in traffic, and then your daughter hears it and thinks, okay, this is how I'm supposed to exist. And then you go to the grocery store, and then it comes out in the cashier who gives you the wrong change. And then you go home and it's taken out on your wife over dinner. And then you go to bed and get up and do it all over again. And you never dealt with anything. You've never processed where it really stemmed from, when it was probably just from the kid this morning that spilled their milk on your pants. And it has nothing to do with anybody else that felt all the after effects of it.
Man, it's like the microaggressions they're like the most damaging part too. Like, so it's I had an experience where I got put into a leadership position at my school, but then they took the 20-year-old white girl that the boss was close with and put her in. They made up like a junior leadership position for her, but you calling her in the meetings with and not calling me. And the only reason why you put me there is because I was the longest person that had been there, and you knew that there was no way you were going to keep me if you didn't do that. But then you still did this slick shit and put this person in here. It's kind of like my overseer. Like, come on, we see and feel all that. But then to keep your job, because you can't be the aggressive Black person, you just bury it. You bury it. And then that comes out, like you said, that comes out in your home, that comes out in your kids. I mean, you again, we bring it up. You start drinking. You have that drink right as soon as you get home. You smoke some weed or something right when you get home, doing all these things to cope instead of actually like learning how to deal with that trauma.
Yep. Yep. And that's what's important, is because when you don't deal with the trauma, it just creates a cycle. Like, it just re-traumatizes you over and over and over. And sometimes the trigger is not even affected to the trauma. You know, once you keep recycling that, what happens is now your daughter drops her toy, and every time she drops her toy, it's a traumatic experience for you that takes you back to a bad place that has nothing to do with the toy or your daughter, but that's where you're at.
Or and you like sometimes you'll be on edge, you know, you just like be on edge, and then like these small little things just trigger you, and then you're like, why did I react so hardcore
Mm-hmm.
to something so small, you know? And even thinking about like what you said, like picking your daughter up and going home. Like I remember laying down on the couch when I would get home and then not able to move because I'm so tired. And then I feel more worthless because I'm like, oh, I can't even play with my daughter. She wants me to play, but I can't.
Yeah, yeah, and then you're creating that cycle for her to think that that's what you're supposed to do, or think that's what a partner's supposed to do, is just go to work. And there's so much more to life than just going to work. There's a
Mhm.
whole living that happens after 5 p.m.
Yep.
And that's what I think we as persons of color lost sight of. We don't live after 5 p.m. We give so much to our job that, you know, our job is our priority. It has to pay our bills. It has to do A, B, and C. But if our job is gone tomorrow, which COVID showed us it will be gone, we still have to exist. We still have to be strong. We still have to give to our families and to ourselves. And so you have to find means to do that first and do your job second.
Yeah, I kind of have this tone. I have this term I've been using. It said, "Ma'am, f your job," because that's and see, I bring it up again. Like the pressure of that job means so much that even strips away at our humanity, right?
Hmm.
I need to have this job because I don't want to be the deadbeat person. I don't want to be the deadbeat black person, right? We're fighting all these stereotypes
Yep.
that really we're only put there to kind of control us and demean us anyway, but we're fighting those stereotypes to the point that we're allowing ourselves to like lose our humanity.
Hmm. Hmm. And we're fighting stereotypes to not, you know, to not be placed in this bubble that society created, or maybe we created. You know, it's hard to say where it came from, but we're fighting against that, and then we're traumatizing ourselves in the process. No one told us that we can't, you know, do something, but we put that on ourselves that we can't. And then, you know, we have to just keep fighting against everything. And next thing, then you wake up one day and you realize that you fight every moment of the day. For what? Who are you fighting? You don't even know who you're fighting anymore.
Well, that is so right. It's like constant fighting, constant fighting. It makes me think too, like when you say all this, like all this trauma, makes me think like once COVID hit, you know, when you've seen all like the Karens and stuff like that, I was saying that there seemed to be a lot of mental illness in that. And it just seemed like once COVID hit, it just all everybody's trauma just started unleashing.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think that's true because when COVID hit, it brought the pandemic and it brought fear right at our front door, and we can't hide it. We can't not open the door. We got to let it in. And so it just brought up, it's kind of like how we as persons of color let all of our experiences manifest in other areas of our life. When COVID hit, everybody's fears are manifesting in all areas of their life. So the Karens in the park are freaking out because they're scared of whatever they're scared of, but it's manifesting in this person that's walking through the park with their dog, the person that's walking down the street in front of them. And so it's really not about that experience that they're in. It's just about the fears that they have from their life. Um, and one thing that I've noticed with COVID coming up is that so many dynamics in families are broken because new generations are not willing to accept the status quo that older generations have set the precedence for. So, you know, you may not be willing to accept what Grandma Joe says is what we're going to do on Thanksgiving anymore. And so then that creates the dynamics of fear and anger within the family, because now we're fighting against each other because I want to do something different, because that doesn't make sense. That's wrong. This is a new way, a new society. And so the families are now fighting within themselves. And sometimes that goes out into the community. So, you know, you got this Karen fighting somebody at the park when she probably just had an argument with her husband. not making it okay, but it's just transcending to all the wrong areas instead of being dealt with.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like in those, like in most relationships where you take stuff out on the people you feel comfortable with, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes, like, I feel like with white people, it's like they take stuff out on people they feel inferior, that are inferior to them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you're starting to, you're seeing all that. I like what you said about the familial things being broken. Hold on one second. Right now, the dog wants to play with the squeaky toy. Yeah, because I've seen a lot of people being vocal about how they're not accepting the racist uncle stuff at Thanksgiving this year. I mean, even both my wife and I have had problems with our individual parents that we have like really like stood firm on. These are gonna change because I remember growing up. I don't know if your family was specifically like this, but in my family, like they always put these labels on the kids, right? Like the kid is just born, they're like, oh, he's gonna be sneaky. Ooh, she
Mm-hmm.
gonna be fast. Like all this like negative like foreshadowing.
Yep.
It's just like what the like, and that's all that negative generational crap.
Yep.
But we had an experience kind of like that where um I've had to like talk to my mom about some of those things, and I know what she means isn't harmful, but what she doesn't get is like when you give a kid that sort of label at an early age, you're gonna create that in that kid. And so we're very adamant on don't put them labels on her. Don't even say that. Don't
Mm-hmm.
She's one too young to even be sexualizing to that point anyway.
Yep.
And that has caused conflict, but we stood firm in it and we're seeing changes. We're slowly seeing changes in that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's important to do is to stand firm in what you want to see in the future, because the future is for our children. It's not for the people of our past. But it's definitely real. Like generations before us, they're very negative, and their intentions are not to be. That's just what they do. You watch television and be like, look at her, she just this and she's just that. And you have no idea what this character really is like, but you've already formed a negative connotation about her. Um, but I think it's really important to just stand firm in what you want for your future generations, for your children. I think another thing that's dividing families and breaking familiar cycles is this election is really like I'm not inviting Uncle Joe over because he's a Trump supporter, and that is breaking so many family ties that they don't want to be around that. We were always taught you don't really talk politics because it's going to create an argument. But now it's like we can't even be in the same house anymore because of your beliefs and what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really learning this year. It's not about what you say to people, it's how you make people feel. Become more aware of that because I think that a lot of people, we give so much put so much value on lip service and not on the experience that we have with you, right? Like we can not have words, but this experience that we had was great. And a lot of these things that makes you feel bad. Like there are people who post things about Trump and like it just gave me a negative vibe, and I had to start blocking people like that. I had to start keeping those things out because that, like, I already have so much going through my mind and my experience with this COVID stuff that I need to make sure that I'm keeping positive energy and things around me. So I could see how that would, definitely separate some family ties.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you add to that the person posting or the person stating that is your grandma or your mom. How do you respond to that? And that's what the people are fighting against. Like, I don't believe what my mom is posting or saying, but I can't disconnect from her because she's my parent. I can't ban her from my life because she's my kids' grandparents. And so you try to have the conversations with them about a change in processing. Let's think a little different. And then it creates situations that are not able to be recovered from in some situations.